Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, but I've got to ask. I think we should talk about some use cases here. What are some of the significant challenges that made each project unique, and how did you guys solve that problem?
Sure, I'll start with a quick one, but I think kind of all encompassing in the things that we've talked about here today. We had a customer. They've been purchasing security control solutions from us, some miscellaneous services here and there. It was a multinational manufacturing company that got a contract with the federal government. They believed themselves to be a very secure company, and they had a lot of controls that indicated that they probably were pretty secure. When they went through a NIST audit, uh, the results weren't so great. What leadership thought was secure, what technology resources thought was secure, what the business thought was secure, they were all different and totally misaligned. When they had a framework to work from, in this particular case, NIST, it was clear what they were lacking. They had a major list of gaps. That's when they needed help from us. Now that they had the gaps done, they could see what was missing. They were left with hundreds and hundreds of tasks that had to be completed in order for them just to comply, not even let alone become more secure, just to comply with what they were required to comply with. So we worked with them to convert those hundreds of tasks into maybe 20 initiatives in a plan of action and milestones. Every one of those tasks in the NIST world is called a POAM, but creating more of a strategic level POAM that sets initiatives up that everything can be wrapped into means now we can create measures. Now we can start to plan what the effort will be. What would it actually take? We can quantify initiatives. We can drive that forward. We did that with this customer. They now had a plan of action and milestones. We brought in program management, having helped develop the strategy together with the customer. We transitioned smoothly into program management to take all those initiatives and turn those into at least a list of individual projects that needed to be accomplished. Some projects, some just do it items, things that just had to get done. We don't need heavy duty project management. We just need to make that thing happen, whatever it needed to be. And in that case, they had a few of the 20 items. There were probably three that just could be done, but still needed to be tracked, still needed to be tied back to the control set that they were audited against so we could see how they were progressing in addressing the control gaps. Uh, from there, we worked with them. Now that we had a program in place, we helped justify that program, quantified the program, set measures in place for how the program would be considered successful, collaborated. We weren't 100% right, of course, on the first round as we went through multiple rounds of setting that up. We came to something that had good alignment from the top and the middle of the organization. Then we drove projects with project charters, making sure that those projects were approved and justified. They were budgeted, they were appropriated for the funds that we needed, and capital and operating expense, well, maybe just in people. We could get that working. We took them through that process, managed that whole program then through all those projects, multiple project managers reporting back through the program, serving as project managers as well in that environment. And ultimately getting those projects done to a point where we were able to report back that the controls were put in place. We're able to address the needs that they had with the gaps. And as a result, they were able to achieve their authority to operate. They got approval to work with this federal government data. Their controls were in place, but they weren't done. They still needed to mature. So that's where we continued to engage with them, aligned with everything from the strategy through the program, through the project. And we made sure that as they operated now, these new controls, these new systems, these new processes, that it's a plan, do, check, act process. You've built it. Now you have to validate it and make sure it's actually working like you expected it to work. We've helped them through that process. As a result, we've created then subsequent POAM part twos that were following that same process, then just cycling back through and driving for them continuous improvement. So they met their needs. They were able to deliver the service, the solution that they offered to a federal government agency And then on an ongoing basis, what they found is that because of putting those solutions in place, following the metrics, understanding what the vision was, understanding what the goals were, measuring it and shining light on it, gave them the ability to continuously improve their maturity and actually not just check boxes, but continually become more and more secure as an organization.
Ron, anything to add there?
Sure, I've got kind of a combination use case that I want to share. And it really, when we look at a lot of the challenges that we've talked through, some of the pitfalls that we've talked through, I think this one really encompasses quite a few of those challenges, as well as some of the SynerComm specific approaches that Mark alluded to. It has direct ties to that. So I think it's a good one to touch base on. So what we're talking about here is a couple organizations that are in the healthcare space, mostly service providers. And one of these organizations, their projects were, they were tied to your state and local government. And one of the other customers, they were tied to the federal government. And when I say tied, they needed to either obtain or maintain their authority to operate status with either the state local government or the federal government. And when we look at some of the consistencies or the challenges that both of these organizations had, much to like Mark talked about in his, when these organizations started, they had a very limited understanding of security framework and even potentially what compliancy really meant. So before we could even get the projects kicked off and the organization to understand the scope of these projects and how involved it was really going to be, we had to identify what framework applied. In most of these cases, fortunately, it was NIST. So we started with, disseminating information on NIST. You're looking at the control framework. It's potentially 350 controls. There's a lot to get your hands wrapped around, especially if you're thinking you need to get an understanding of that before you can get the project moving. So we kind of started with that challenge. Like most organizations, they were very resource constrained. And without a lot of understanding of security, why it's important, compliancy, it was very hard for the technical sides of the house to really kind of take a step away from all of their normal day-to-day application technical responsibilities to be able to put forth that amount of hours and that effort into being able to identify, assess, and provide the detail and the artifacts necessary to support NIST controls or NIST compliancy. We always had transitioning resources. None of these engagements or projects were short-term. It's very challenging for organizations to allocate resources to a project that's 6 to 12 to 24 months in duration. And you may get resources assigned for 3 months, and then they have to roll off. And then you have to kind of onboard and retrain somebody else. When resources leave the organization, in one case we mentioned, a CISO had transitioned out of the organization mid-project. That takes a lot of legacy knowledge and leadership skills directly with that individual. Those are challenges. I think Mark touched on this one, but a lot of times, if you don't have a mature organization, they don't have the systems or the data gathering processes in place to be able to address a NIST control set, a system security plan, even down to POAMs. And the other challenge that's kind of consistent is the intervals are always short. You know, we never have 12 or 24 months to complete these projects. It's always, okay, we knew we had to do it, but now it's 90 days or, 120 days out. So you're always dealing with those very compressed timeframes. So those are kind of the challenges and the pitfalls that we seem to find consistently in this case. You can take a little bit of what Mark's talked about as far as our unique approach. You get a large volume of not only security expertise, but also technical expertise that was brought to bear for these particular projects. And some of the other missing components were the business and the operational understanding and management. So those were kind of two keys from a resource standpoint that we were able to bring to the project. Then when you kind of look at what did we actually do to get these projects back on track, how did we get them to successful completion? The first step sounds really easy. We got it organized. So the bigger question is, how did we manage that? Mark gave a lot of detail, and when we go to our modeling process, that was really step one with these engagements. We used a modeling approach to really dig deep and get a really good understanding of where the project was, what the scope was, and what kind of the objectives and the deliverables need to be, and more importantly, who the stakeholders are. So from there, communication was extremely poor. So we had to improve and fix the various lines of communication, not necessarily with the people that were doing the day-to-day work, but all the way up the line to the leadership and the executives that were very frustrated because all they saw were the rapidly approaching due dates, but they had no clear-cut understanding of where are we in being able to meet that date. So we had to address that. How did we do it? Other than kind of looking at the modeling, we talked extensively about our tool sets. That was very instrumental once we understood what we needed to do, getting all of that data into our standardized tool set. Be able to get the data gathering, the data capturing, getting the scheduling complete, and more importantly, getting the reporting out there that gave the organizations that level of comfort of, okay, here's what the next 3 months look like. Here's what the next 6 months look like. And as we got going, they were able to look back, okay, these are the accomplishments over the last 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. Then they had the ability to have an accurate set of reports that could kind of prove or disprove how close they are to meeting the due dates, and basically to be able to maintain ATO. If you don't have that authority to operate, you jeopardize your potential ability to offer services in those states or those markets, which is a situation nobody wanted to be in. So last but not least, through the approach, through the tools and the resources that we brought to the project, the end result for all of these were the ATOs were either maintained or obtained. And since in a lot of these cases, when we're initially engaged, we've talked about, the processes in the system or the knowledge may be lacking. So one of the things I think that's unique to what we do is when our engagements conclude, we don't take all that legacy knowledge with us. Over the course of our engagement, we spend time with knowledge transfer and either providing the guidance or the tools that these organizations need so that they can support a quality security program, whether we are there to assist them or not.
Gentlemen, I appreciate all of your time. You have been watching to SynerComm's IT Trendsetters. This is episode 6, Information Technology Strategy, Program, and Project Management when aligning and operationalizing your information security program. Thank you, and until next time.